Hey guys, Cody with CJC Off-Road. Today we have a unique one. I was able to swap trucks with Dan at Carli Suspension. So while I have a Tremor on a 2.5 system, I was able to take the keys of his Tremor with a 4.5-inch Carli Pintop system. Now, if you've ever emailed or called Carli Suspension, there's a very high chance you talked to Dan. He's now become the VP of the company after many years there, and he recently purchased a 2022 Tremor. However, having seen mine and driven mine, he wanted to change things up a little bit, and so he went with the 4.5/5.5 Pintop system. Now, for those of you who are confused about the 2.5/3.5 or the 4.5/5.5 systems, they are all actually the same systems. There's only a 2.5 and a 4.5-inch lift coil spring. Now, however, if you do have a 20 and up F-250 without any of the suspension package options, your truck is actually going to yield 3.5 inches or 5.5 inches of lift, depending on which system you go with, due to it sitting 1 inch lower stock than, say, a 17 to 19 truck. Now, starting from the front, this truck has every option possible. So you're going to see the Carli torsion sway bar. For those of you who are not familiar, this is a lighter rate sway bar that really frees up the front of the truck when you're pulling into driveways or really any one-sided hit. So for those of you who do any off-roading, camping with your trucks, things like that, it's going to keep the cab from being tossed around, putting your coffee out of your cup holder in your lap and things like that. Moving on to the shocks, these are the Carli signature tuned King 2.5. So again, they're going to come with all the Carli upgrades like stainless steel shock shafts, as well as their own pistons. Moving on with the 4.5-inch, you have the multi-rate 4.5-inch lift coil. Again, that multi-rate is going to give you a little bit softer rate up front while still stiffening up on the big hits, and that's going to allow the truck to stay composed in heavy off-roading and things like that. Dan also went with the Carli fabricated radius arms. This is the new design, which actually offers even more caster adjustment. So for those of you with unique applications, you're able to dial in caster on these trucks with both the caster bushing in the axle, as well as the lower radius arm bolt. So it's really cool there. And also this new design actually allows them to produce them much quicker. So for those of you who have been waiting or have heard about a wait time with the Carli radius arms, it is dramatically reduced and only becoming lower and lower as time goes on. Moving on to the rear end of this truck, it has the Carli tuned Diva spring pack. That is the full progressive spring pack that is much softer than stock, which is really going to soften up this truck on any of those big hits like railroad tracks and things like that, while also being smoother just on the standard highway. Now again, it does have the King 2.5 with all the custom tuning that Carli offers. So someone has actually driven this truck, oftentimes actually Dan at Carli, around town, off-road, things like that, in order to develop a tune that is smooth on and off the highway and really rounds out these systems quite well instead of just throwing a large shock like a lot of the manufacturers are doing these days. They use the size of the shock to really act as a buzzword for these systems. While 2.5-inch shock is plenty for these trucks, the custom tuning is what really takes it to the next level. Now on that note, you'll notice these shocks are a little bit hammered. These are actually one of the test sets that Carli uses to make their tuning changes. So Dan's very familiar with these shocks. Carli has probably had them apart about 100 times. So it's kind of fun to see these shocks living on. Now the wheel and tire package on this truck is a little different than what we typically go with. It is the 38x1350 Toyo MT. However, these are the American Force Evo SS wheels in 20x9 with 0 offset. Now, while not a standard wheel that we typically put in a lot of our videos, I think this combination turned out amazing, actually, I think, for a off-road yet street collaboration, if you will, on the wheel and tire package. The overall look of this truck, as you can see by these clips, is quite amazing. Now, one thing I didn't mention on the front end was a steering stabilizer. However, in discussion of these tires, this is the perfect section. So if you're just gonna be running these tires and you want to purchase one stabilizer, you would run the Ford High Mount Stabilizer by Carli. Now that high mount stabilizer is going to fight the natural right-hand pull of these Toyo MTs. Now obviously in Dan's position, he is afforded the ability to run both the high and low mount. So what you can do with those, if you really have an aggressive right-hand pulling tire like the MT, you actually increase the pressure in the upper high mount stabilizer, lower the pressure in the low mount stabilizer, and that's really going to help fight that left-hand pull. However, there's actually plenty of guys who especially don't have access to nitrogen and things like that, who've just mounted the high mount and the low mount out of the box and had perfect results. So we do get a lot of questions about stabilizers. I hope that clears that up a little bit. Now, oftentimes guys ask, why don't we have a dual stabilizer kit? This is our version of the dual stabilizer kit. Typically on the market, most of the dual stabilizer systems out there are non-adjustable shocks. They use a lot of U-bolts or very basic bracketry just to clamp to your tie rod and have some shocks dangling off the front of your axle. This is a high performance setup that's fully adjustable using stainless shocks. They're never gonna rust, have a long warranty as far as leakage and things like that, and are just a very well-rounded package that allow basically infinite adjustability in the damping of your front end. Now lastly, for those of you guys who like the big bling factor, these shocks aren't hanging down full of flashy colors. However, that is part of what makes them last so long, is they're tucked up. The upper is in a factory position even, and that's gonna allow a very long life out of these shocks, so you're not gonna see yourself replacing stabilizers quite often and things like that. So there are a lot of benefits to going with a setup like this versus a traditional dual stabilizer setup. Now lastly, personally, I'm a little bit bummed out about this one. This truck has the Baja Designs, a linkable setup. I was really hoping to beat Dan to that and getting it in our trucks, because you do see both of our trucks on a lot of social media. However, he did beat me to the punch, so it is running the new Baja Designs linkable setup, which we also have linked down below. That is a very cool setup. You're able to run all of these lights to one switch. You can cut up the harness and set it on different switches, things like that. So it's a really cool setup. It's probably gonna be one of the least obtrusive forward mounted light setups if your front camera is concerned. You do see them on the camera. However, for like tubular light bars and things like that, they completely block the view. You still have a decent view. So it is kind of a cool setup there. I'm a big fan of these linkable setups. I plan on putting it on mine and doing another video on that as well. And wrapping this up, obviously I'm a big fan of this platform. A little bit jealous with the new screen and things like that on the 22 trucks, but I can't say enough about this truck. Thank you for Dan for letting us borrow it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. Give us a call, shoot us an email, and we'll see you guys on the next one.